Hola community, welcome to Blender Today live episode 237, 2.37. How are you? How have you been? The last time we did this live stream 2 weeks ago, so many things have changed. Blender 4.0 is now beta, Blender 4.1 is now alpha, Blender conference tickets have sold out since then, a new font show up in Blender, it's October, the month of the Blender conference at the end of this month. And then I was thinking, I was just saying like, okay, in 1 month, everything will be over. No, in 1 month and 5 days, Blender 4.0 will come out. Like the official release of Blender 4. It's just so much, I don't even know how I'm going to work on the release notes and the Blender conference and all in 1 month. So let's take it slowly. That's why we're here, to chill, have some mate, some chills, just a moment where we can hang out with the community. So yeah, Blender Conference 2023 is sold out. I hope you managed to get a ticket in time. I mentioned this here a few times, but like a little warning. If you already have like plane tickets, hotel, and everything set up, but you didn't get the time to get the actual ticket for the conference, send an email. Maybe there will be someone like not coming and some tickets will be available, so send an email so you can be added to the waiting list. Other than that, I think we are ready to move into the nearly 500 changes that have happened in Blender since last time we talked. On blender.community, on Blender Today, I have published the whole list, the entire list of all the changes, but of course I'm not going to go through all of them, only a few of them. Later this week, by the way, Blender 4.0 is in beta, 4.1 is alpha. Splash screen hasn't changed yet, so it's not you. The splash screen will come maybe this week already. I think maybe tomorrow already. There will be a new splash screen also for the alpha. For this one, the sprites will change. So stay tuned for that. We can start, I think, already. The list of changes, it's a bit all over the place because I usually have a script that goes through all the commits and then sorts them alphabetically, but some of the changes start with like some developers maybe forget about adding the correct message. Sometimes starts with a random thing like allow instead of animation. Allow weights, setting weights, Ctrl X without paint mask enabled. This change starts with A, and it's worth mentioning because the Ctrl X to shortcut to set weights is a terrible shortcut, by the way, because X is deletion, but that one has changed from, well, it's no longer limited to the mask paint mode. It's now on any weight paint, which is nice because you can set it in other modes. And then okay, now let's start properly to talk about where is my soundboard? Here, soundboard. This little guy, Mario Pipe. It's in green even. Okay, animation. A for animation. So in animation this week we do some still some, because this was 2 weeks ago. Some of the news are related to 4.0, some are still from 4.1. Although, by the way, sorry, I named this episode Blender 4.1 Alpha as a clickbait because you will see a lot of these type of videos, and I just want you to hear it from first party, from the Blender official channel. There's nothing new in Blender 4.1 Alpha at this point, because the moment 4.0 becomes beta, the new development process starts, but developers are so busy tackling bugs and everything, making 4.0 stable, that there's nothing new in 4.1. So if you see a video of 4.1, skip it, at least for a week, 2 weeks, even more. I think this being a major release, there will be some time until new things show up in 4.1. There will be at the end of when next year, when 4.1 comes out, there will be definitely features, of course, because 4.1 is when Eevee Next, Chris Pencil 3, bunch of other things gonna be added, but not yet. It's still so far into the future. So yeah, it was just a clickbait, but with actual information. Now let's go back into what matters, which is what you can actually try right now in Blender 4.0 and others. Okay, yeah, so this is a mix of mainly 4.0, but also older things that have been tackled already for a while. Like for example, in animation, all the operators that were related to bone groups have been moved to bone layers, bone collections, sorry. Yes, bone collections. But some new operators even show up, like select by bone color. You can select bones that have a matching color. Also, there is a when you create a bone, or when you add new bones through the Shift A operator, the default bone collection where this goes will be the active one, and this otherwise is gonna go into a bones collection, which makes it nice, makes it better for importers, for example, to have at least one active collection, like it happens with scene. Everything goes into the scene collection in Blender. That has one safe place where they can be added. Okay, let's see what is actually new. Multi-editing for F-curve modifiers. Now you can Alt-click, drag on F-curve modifiers with the same name, in the same of the same type, of course, and the values should work same as everywhere in Blender. It's a bit of try to guess when things work or not. One hint though is that the Alt-click functionality works everywhere where copy to selected works. So copy to selected, this option in the menus, it's the same thing. So it uses the same API under the hood. So if you see that copy to selected, you can also use Alt-click drag to affect multiple of the same time, multiple items. Graph editor, there is a push-pull operator, a new one, also part of the many operators that have been added already from Ares Devo. I say it right, English, French speakers over there. Hi, by the way. So we can better see it here in action in this video by Chris. This is a push-pull operator. So basically taking a pose and exaggerating it, a curve and exaggerating it. There is also a graph editor key handle selection operator. It adds an operator, select key handles, this is the API for it, that changes the selection of the different parts of the Bezier keyframe. It operates on all keys that are either themselves selected or have either of the handles selected. Added by Nathan Bechtel. Time offset slider. Move things back and forth from the active frame. So it's like you move, like time traveling almost, by keeping the shape of the curve. Enable visual keying of IK influence bones. This sounds huge. Visual keying, so when you key something and it adds the keyframes exactly of what you see is what you get, regardless of the constraints. Now it will work for bones that are influenced by an IK constraint. This wasn't possible before. That's the visual keying system only check constraints on the bone itself and not whether the bone was part of an IK chain. It's actually quite big. Yeah, so it fixes a bug that it starts with 76,000. So that seems quite a long while ago, actually, from 2020, May 15, 2020. That was pandemic days. That sounds so far ago. Next, implement a new curve-aware vertex to B-bone segment mapping mode. Currently, vertices are mapped to bone. Have a phone call. What people calls these days. Currently, vertices are mapped to B-bone segments without taking the rest post curve into account. It is very simple and fast, but causes poor deformations in some cases where the rest curvature is significant. For example, mouth corners in the new Refi face rigs. This patch implements a new mapping mode that addresses this problem. The general idea is to do an orthogonal projection on the curve. However, since there is no analytical solution for Bezier curves, it uses a segment approximation. And here you can read more of these details, but there is even a wiki page already for it and a pull request, which has some pictures to look at. So then the straight original mapping, how it used to be, and the new one that actually follows the curve. And this is a comparison for the deformation. Straight, how it used to be, and curved. This is another thing that is kind of huge now that I'm... Nice. Wow. Is this 2.4.0? When was this committed? Committed 3 months ago. No. This is not committed 3 months ago. Excuse me. Otherwise it wouldn't show up. This maybe GT. Still exciting. If it was 3 months ago, 6 months ago. Another a UI change in the animation editors. Draw and name channels colors as a little rectangle in the channel list instead of taking over the entire channel name background. Oh, it's nice because some names, some colors were completely unreadable. Some channels were completely unreadable. So we have this on the left. Yes, the left is where some colors would make this unreadable. Has to be fixed. And this is how it is done now, which... Okay, it's a start. I think it's a good implement. It's good, but I wonder why they decided to do it this way with this square, because we do have squares now, but for a while now in the dope sheet, if I'm not mistaken. Or is it in the graph editor? In the graph editor. So if I go to Shift F6 to the graph editor, we do have these things on the side, and they have a certain height and width. And now we have, okay, it's a different concept, right? It's a different thing, but at least they should have the same width. Like, even be on the same side or not. I think this was discussed in the past, the color of the curve, if the color of the curve should match or not. I think in the channels it makes sense to be on the right because it's the beginning of the color that would be used for drawing the rest of the channel. So it's nice to see the connection there. But I wonder if it should at least match the width. Otherwise we have like different... I don't know. To be decided. That's a good thing. Is this in 4.0? Oh yeah, last week. Oh, okay. Now this is in 4.0. We cannot change it for 4.0, but for 4.1 maybe we can look at it again. I think 4.1 is gonna be the the good 4.0 because some things for 4.0 were added like the same day the UI freeze happened and the feature freeze happened. So I'm more excited about 4.1 than 4.0, to be honest. And sometimes, you know, when you get a new software update, getting the 0.0 is kind of risky in a way, as in, you know, that the fixes versions are gonna be much better to use, I think. Whatever new radical concept was introduced in the 0.0 version is gonna be addressed later. Add a new operator to sync bones colors between selected bones. Sync colors. Copy to selected feature only copied single properties, while bone colors. Nice. But is it sync to selected? Copy the bound color of the active to all the colors. So then it's not sync, it's copy to selected. Sync means that if I update one, the other one is going to update. Like they stay connected. Maybe I'm not understanding the feature. Another thing too, is there any developer in the room? like when there is a doctor, is there any doctor in the room? There is any developer in the area here? I'm reading the chat, by the way. We're live streaming. I'm reading you, but I'm also trying to read the features and trying to understand, because I didn't have the time to see all the features before actually starting the live stream. So some of them are you getting the first reaction as a user that I'm having here. Next, add operator to solo the active bone collection. With armature layers, it was possible to, with one click, show a single layer and hide all the others. It is now possible with bone collections as well. For that, I added a new operator. Nice. Solo, and the operator name is solo visibility. I think the visibility is already implied in the solo. What other usages of solos we have? We have solo collection, I think, right? If you shift click, it's shift to set children, hide in viewport. Yeah, we have shift to set inside to isolate collection. Yeah, I think we use the word isolate, right? Not solo. Yeah, should it be solo or isolate? We also have the word local, like local object, local view. We should unify those things at some point. What do you think? Solo, isolate, local. Local, I already don't like it because it sounds like something is local or remote connected. Solo is used in the NLA. Isolate, solo, isolate. I think it's very divided. All right, next. That's what I like about Blender today, that we can also, you know, discuss and do some real life and live reviewing of some features. And I can ask for feedback immediately. Rename the skeleton panel to pose. Nice. Add channel time options to the bake action operator. I think this one is 3 days ago, so this one actually made it into 4.1. This is probably one of the very few 4.1 features. The option, it's a add channel type options to the bake action. So whenever you bake an action, now you can choose which channels: rotation, rotation scale, or B-bone. The B-bones. Add move bone to collection operator to the pose mode menu. Nice. Warn when a bone is added to a hidden bone collection. Oh, this is nice. Blender should also warn you when you do like in object mode. In object mode, it can happen if you press Ctrl G. Blender added this object to a collection that doesn't exist in the current scene. It's not linked to the scene. It exists, but it's not linked. So it's nice that at least we're warning users in some places when the collection is hidden. It doesn't have to be a warning. It can be a info, a report warning. Or maybe, yeah, maybe a warning, but not a big one. Let's switch topic. So asset shelf has changed. This in the last couple weeks. This is a UI change. So the asset shelf and other parts of Blender now have a cutout thingy. So when there is nothing to show, don't use some space in my scene. This is great because it means that now now you have more real estate. You can actually see through parts of Blender when there is room for it. For example, by default, you only have like on one corner you have some settings, on the other you have some options, and there is all the space that now is freed up because the UI goes around it. So it's still readable. When you are in some tools, you can still read what is behind it, but you can see through. For example, by default, you only have like on one corner you have some settings, on the other you have some options, and there is all the space that now is freed up because the UI goes around it. So it's still readable. When you are in some tools, you can still read what is behind it, but you can still behind the labels. And when there is not, you see this. And also it's smart because when you move, get close, it closes the gap. And the same has been, well, it was first added actually to the asset shelf. So because at the very beginning, the asset shelf, it's kind of empty. You don't have any catalogs open. So yeah. Oh, let me make the UI slightly bigger because so you can see. Well, so you can, but so also I can see a bit better. All right. Next, oh, another change. It's improved region height snapping behavior. So the asset shelf has a very nice snapping behavior. Oh, also Blender is smart enough to not let you resize the asset shelf from the invisible area. It's more like a fix, but you can resize it from in this part or from this part. Add asset library selector. Oh yeah, this is new. Yeah, now you can choose which asset library you're going to see the asset shelf from. Before you would always use the old asset library, so, but it's nice to filter it, especially if you're working on a project. It is nice to see what is part of the where is the asset coming from. Next, for Collada. What year is it? People still using Collada. Let me close all this. And yeah, bone collection support has been added to the Collada file type. Next, C for console. Add support for displaying tab stops. Without this, it was necessary to convert pasted text into spaces for them to display properly. Anymore. Next, the curves. There's curve stuff. Add RNA API to add points. So there is now an API. Maybe it should have been in Python. Curves, add curves. You can write it this way to add, for example, a bunch of curves in one go. And related to that, there is initial support for vertex groups in the new curves data block in Blender. So this will be used by, well, by everything that uses curves. But for now, I think the first users are going to be the Grease Pencil crew. It's in preparation for Grease Pencil 3.0. Exciting. People asking, can that gap be disabled? Yes, if that gap should go away if you have region overlap off. So region overlap off disables that. See, that is working great. All right, something happening with the asset shelf. Ah, yeah. Holy. Okay, something is funky here, but not only with region overlap, but also if you have the header color, if it's transparent, if it's non-transparent, I think it goes away. If you put alpha 0 or alpha 1 100% opaque, I think click events they should be considered like clicking on the background, basically on the actual header. And this gap over here is gonna go away soon too. This is so annoying. This one here in the corner, that it just disappears, just makes the icon disappear, and that will go away soon. All right, C for cycles. The make transmission color. Actually, this change is in like three parts because it's related to shaders, cycles, and Eevee. But we're gonna see this split all over the show today when I get to the E and when I get to the S for shader. So make transmission color in principal BSDF match the base color. This matches the behavior of Eevee, which is the next thing I'm going to talk about. But first, add metallic tint to principal BSDF using the F82 tint model. What is this? Well, we're gonna see it now when we talk about Eevee. Let's look at the pictures that Clement has put up here. This is Cycles. This is Eevee. Cycles, Eevee. Very close, very close. But not only that, it's actually that now the metallic has a tint. So it's no longer a value, it's a vector, and a color, basically, color vectors. So you can choose whatever you want. You can color your metallicness. We're gonna see more in the shader part. Actually, that commit is part of the shader section. There has been so many other changes in Eevee Next, for example. Well, cleanups, tons of cleanups, but Eevee Next, and I'm not gonna, well, DNA, Draw Manager. Eevee Next has all these changes, which I'm not gonna mention because Eevee Next is not it's not there yet. So some of them are pretty exciting, like ray tracing stuff. Some of them are just bringing back what it was there, and some of them is actually implementing things back like SSS, but also implementing them in a nicer way. Like there's no options for visibility for light probes. Pretty neat. But yeah, not gonna mention that. Also not gonna mention the gazillion fixes that have been worked on. There's also been a lot of work on the GPU and the OpenGL side of things. As you can see here in the GL area and GPU area. Grease Pencil 3.0 also. The stats, for example, now work in Grease Pencil 3, but again, work in progress. Let's jump into the next section, which is geometry nodes. In geometry nodes, we have a whole bunch of changes, actually. Some of them are bigger, some of them are smaller. Use lazy evaluation in the repeat zone. This is a performance improvement, basically. That makes it so lazy evaluation is that it works only if it has to, if it really has to. And if it can avoid it, it will avoid it. So nice. Isn't that like what we would all like to do in life? Lazy evaluation in the repeat zone. This is one made it last week. Yeah, this one made it into 4.0. Nice. Filter data block buttons for tools and modifiers. This one in particular, it's actually related to another feature that made it into Blender 4.0, which is node tools. They are official in 4.0. I know they were experimental in literally the day of feature freeze, and there were some discussions if we should go into like 4.0 or not, because if you do it in 4.1 you can actually make it nicer and better, but also if you add it in 4.0, users can start making tools already, even though the system maybe could be better. It can always be better, right? So it was decided to add it as part of 4.0 on its current state, write some documentation and let the community make tools. There are not going to be any built-in tools that come with Blender for 4.0, but it is planned for 4.1 to have some tools that are built in Blender. So what it's a tool? Well, a tool is a geometry nodes tool, a node tool. It's basically an operator, so like an action that you can perform based off your setup. So if I have this cube and I want to make a tool to convert it into a sphere, I can go to geometry nodes, modifier, go to tool, and here I'm gonna create a new tool. In this new tool, I have geometry to geometry. So basically, I don't need much more than this. If I have this tool and let's call it make it sphere here. I have a regular setup for geometry nodes. I'm gonna add if I want to make it into a sphere, the best way to do it would be to just add a UV sphere, right? And that's it. If I have this setup and I go into edit mode, because they can be for edit mode in meshes and curves for the time being, This will be expanded into the future, but yeah, edit mode for this type of geometry. These are the modes: edit mode and sculpt mode. If I go into edit mode, I see an icon here in the header, which the same icon as that is in the asset browser. Nice. So there is a title for non-assets, make it sphere. That's it. If I run the operator, I have it. That's it. That's all it is. Interesting? Well, it gets more interesting where you can actually expose things. Like, for example, now I can't change any of these preferences, but for example, if I want to expose some of these settings, I just need to connect whatever I want into the inputs of the group input node. And if I run this again, now these settings will be exposed here as options in my operator. Nice. And of course, everything that you tweak here in the settings, all the names and everything is going to be propagated too. And also, I don't know if you noticed, but the name of the group, it's the name of the operator. So you're literally making your own tools. This, well, yeah, that's why it's called tools modifiers. But these, well, tool modifiers, no group tools, because they can also be modifiers, but that's a whole separate topic. The UI now, it may seem a bit convoluted, but actually once you get the hang of it, it's actually easy to understand. If you're in tools, you're making tools that are not even related to the current object. They're just editing whatever data block that is in your blend file. And modifier, yes, you are actually adding an geometry nodes modifier here, just like the regular workflow. That's the only thing that you need to keep in mind. And the tool, it's awesome because you can basically perform operations, repeat operations. This also is a group, so you can put it in your setups, in your current setups, and reuse it. You can make it an asset, right click, mark as asset, and now it's gonna show like an asset. That's it. Next. Oh yeah, actually that feature, the feature that changed filter data block, it was related to node tools. Geometry nodes, disable viewer node shortcut in tool context. The viewer node doesn't work for tools. Yeah, that's one thing that doesn't work. How would you pre-visualize a tool? Run the operator on the act. That can be slow and dangerous. Don't require geometry input for the move to node. It's valid for modifier node groups to not have a geometry input, since they can just be generators. The operator used to give a warning and cancel itself when there was no geometry input. Now it works. It just skips the geometry input and the group input node to the new group. Support baking individual simulations. Nice, this is related to simulation nodes. Previously, it was only possible to bake all the simulations at once. Now, this is great for simple use cases, but in more complex setup, one can have independent simulations that should also be baked independently, also to save performance. And once you really like your simulation, you don't have to re-bake the planet. Can we use selections from edit mode in these tools? Oh yeah, tools have a very specific set of nodes. For example, you can have the scene 3D cursor position if you want to get access to the data of the 3D cursor here. Nice. You can also get access for the collection, the selection. You can get selection. Read selection. And then you can set the selection also. Set selection. There you go. Next. Add option to force inputs to be single values. Add a checkbox to node group inputs to force the inputs to be single values and not accept varying fields. While this could also be done more automatically, and it would be argued that requiring the flexibility is helpful for users who want to use attributes, there are cases where the field of interferencing doesn't work, or the use attribute option is just unhelpful. require modifier tag for add menu. Show the non-assets. This is what I show you already. That in the menu, you can also, in the add menu, you can also show non-assets for the add modifier menu. No, not group assets. I think the last time I demoed this, something had to be marked as an asset to show in the Shift A of the modifiers, the new Shift A menu. Now it's not. Now you can also show non-assets, similar to how you can you see the non-asset if something is not marked as an asset. You see the non-assets there, and the same for this probably. Unassigned geometry nodes, and if something is not there, it should be unassigned non-assets. Neat. And the same for non-asset tools, which I just mentioned. Add inspection index to the repeat zone. Previously, it was only possible to inspect the data from the first iteration. That applied to both the viewer node as well as the socket inspection. Now, there is a new inspection index setting in the zone properties. If it specifies which iteration should be used for the inspection. Ooh, nice. You can actually inspect, see the result of your repeat zone at different inspection indices. Nice. Store tool group in a separate editor property. This enables switching back and forth between the modifier and the tool context of the geometry node operator without losing the assigned tool node group. Per editor. Yeah, I guess it's more flexible. And that's it. Well, this is a usability improvement. It's related to geometry nodes partially, but it's in the section for mesh. Show attribute name collision warning in more panels. So far, only the attribute panel showed a warning when there were multiple or duplicate attribute names. The patch adds the same warning to the vertex groups, color attributes, and UV maps panel. Yeah, because these attributes are no longer unique. Yeah, now you can have duplicate. So users should be warned about that. Right, time to move to H for Hydra. Export Blender shader nodes as Material X node graph. This adds initial support for rendering cycles and Eevee shaders in Hydra render engines that support Material X. Not all the nodes are currently supported. See the detailed compatibility list in 112.864. Name of the task. Nice. Interoperability. There is a list with a bunch of colors like a Christmas tree where green is happy, red is not happy. Okay, for Keymap. Add a shortcut to open preferences. Well, this only applies to non-Mac. On a Mac, you could do Command comma to open the preferences because it's something that is a standard in all macOS versions and all the macOS apps. Now this is similar applied to Blender, to Windows and Linux. Control comma is gonna pop up the preferences. Nice. Now let's first cover the regular Keymap. Restore most used brush shortcuts. There was a change some time ago where in an effort to simplify the Keymap in Blender, sculpt modes, paint modes, sculpt mode mainly, some of the shortcuts that were hard-coded to specific tools have been removed, so users could add their own. But based on feedback from the community, some people were used to those shortcuts, so some of them have been brought back. This needs a bit more thinking, or at least do it early in Beacon 1 so we have a whole cycle of people giving feedback. In the industry compatible Keymap, region shortcuts and fix inconsistencies. There is a task here with all the changes that have been done for inconsistencies, and it's actually a two-part commit referring to the pull request 112628. L for lattice. Lattice? What is so special about lattice? Avoid error when drawing properties panel. There's a fix. It's not a... So apparently there was an error. Avoid an error when drawing the lattice properties panel. The code for drawing mesh attributes warnings didn't account for the fact that lattices also have vertex groups, and thus the particular code can be called without an active mesh. Ah, never thought about it. Yeah, it's more like a fix. L for light linking. Why? Ah, this is not in cycles because it was called light linking, even though light linking so far it's only in cycles. So this is a change that it's on the user interface side of things. This is one of the things that were not added at the time where light linking was introduced, and it was long overdue because the user interface for light linking looked way too different than the other. I don't think, yeah, this is how it looks like. So now it looks more like a UI list, you know. It has these buttons to add, to remove, to have special settings there, and you can actually, you know, make it look familiar. Checkbox icons for state indication. This is a change. I don't know if we have a picture here, but yeah, it was using, instead of using the regular icons from the outliner, now it's using instead of using data type icons, now it's using the same icons as the collections exclusion in the outliner and everywhere else. Actually, I think we're pretty consistent with those even with checkboxes. We're using the same icon than the outliner. And finally, you can also now reorder in light linking collections and move things around. Reordering is important, actually. It's not just a user interface thing. The reordering has affects as fallback. But it's important that things are sortable. M for macOS. Upgrade to Xcode 11. Sorry, 11. Plus 4. 15. Blender 4.0. Xcode 15 is used, where 3.3 and 3.6 keeps using the old Xcode version. There also been a bunch of changes in Metal, but support for... I wonder if this is related, because also Apple developers have been working in parts of the GPU module and GL commits that I mentioned earlier. So I think it's related to that. Node groups. This is nodes in general. Add and do steps after drag and drop interface items. These have to be added manually by the drop targets. Drag and drop when dropping things. And you can now undo. Yay for mistakes. Oh, nice usability one. I was looking forward to this one. Move float values to value node with link drag search. This is a feature like this was added a while back for most types, I think for integers, but not for values, for these kind of values. So now when you drag a float value and you add a value node, the value from that okay, and the value from that setting will be ported over to the value of the value node. Anyway, this example is pretty neat because it goes from 78.7 inches or minutes, depends who you ask, and then it converts to 2 in this case, the value, because it doesn't have a unit specified, but I guess it's Blender units. Next. Python API. Some minor changes, I think. There is a free internal Python data using systexit. Yep. if you're using this property, also support the step and precision arguments in RNA ID prop UI create, and support step and precision arguments. That's nice. Makes it for improved interface and experience, actually, if you can specify the step and precision. And finally, add specular tint texture support for node shader utilities. Let's move to R for real-time compositor, also known as the regular compositor. New nodes have been supported. Implement double edge mask node. Nice. Patch implements a double edge mask node for the real-time compositor. The implementation is primarily based on the 1+8 JFA jump flooding algorithm, of course, which was also introduced in this commit. Neat, a new algorithm in town. Implement in paint mode node. This patch implements the in-paint node for the real-time compositor. The in-painting region is filled by the sampling color of the nearest boundary pixel, which is the definition of what the in-painting node does. So this implementation, this is important. It's not identical to the existing CPU implementation due to technical infeasibility. In particular, the CPU implementation uses a Manhattan distance transform, while the GPU implementation uses an Euclidean one. Okay. Furthermore, the CPU uses a serial convolution starting from the boundaries outwards, while the GPU uses a lateral Gaussian blur in the direction tangent to the boundary. Long story short, don't trust your CPU or your GPU. Just choose one. If you're gonna render, use it. Well, actually, that is an experimental setting. So, okay, so only trust what you choose in the compositor. In the compositor, you can choose the in the preferences that you can now open with Control comma. You can enable the experimental setting for experimental compositors. In here, you can choose if you want to use tiled, full frame, or GPU. If you have GPU, then yeah, what you see is what you get in the viewport and at the end, and when you render. Tiled and full frame are going to use the CPU based one, so that's when you have to keep an eye on how things look. The next feature in the GPU compositor, allow more result types. The result class was reserved for inputs and outputs of operations, so its allowed types were naturally those exposed to the user. However, we now use the result class internally for intermediate results, so it now makes sense to extend the allowed types. And last but not least, wait, this is a non-functional change. So basically less memory usage, higher performance, higher precision, better things, less memory. I like that. Let's switch to S for shader. Okay, this is what I mentioned before, that the specular tint in the principal BSDF and the metallic tint, they are, well, the specular tint already existed, is no longer a float. It's now a color. So you can color your specular more freely. Nice. Let's see if there is a picture by Bison. Yeah. Nice. Cycles Eevee. Almost. Next, use single principal BSDF input for metallic and specular tint to match standard surface and open PBR. Next, rename subsurface scattering methods and change the default. Clarify that one was specifically designed for skin shading and one it's not. And this should be in the name of it. One is for skin and one is not. Oh, even in the code. Nice. It's easier to understand, and also designed for skin shading. The random walk. Neat. So there is random walk and random walk skin. Actually, this is part of many changes that were done in the principal BSDF as the last minute on the day that feature freeze, UI freeze happened. Brecht went and merged like a ton of changes like this one. Rename principal BSDF emission to emission color, because now it's more clear. But you can see the list of changes. It's like a one big collection of whatever was missing for the long awaited principal BSDF v2. Most of surface scale input below radius in the principal BSDF. Clamp various shader inputs for principal BSDF. This might be one that not everybody is extremely happy about, because it's clamping the values to avoid discrepancies between cycles and Eevee, cycles open shading language, and yeah, maybe even other systems, more interconnect interoperability. Is this the right move? I think it is, although there should be a way to be able to break things, maybe. But how do you show that? Maybe clamping should be a node that you or an option. What do you think? Rename specular to specular index of refraction level in the principal BSDF, and add weight to transmission subsurface code sheen socket names. So let's see it actually in action. How does it even look? Now, shading. There was a time last week where even just going to the shading tab would crash the whole planet. So metallic roughness IR, subsurface weight, and now all the options, they don't say subsurface again, because for a few days the subsurface word would be repeated, scale, anisotropy, everything, everywhere. The same for specular and transmission. Code, it would be code weight, code roughness, code IR. Nice. It looks so pretty now. Compact yet powerful. Next, new icons for snapping. Well, not new icons, but old icons actually. The patch for these icons was introduced a long time ago. This has this design that is maybe familiar for people that are coming from other CAD apps. But yeah, some of them are a bit cryptic unless you're familiar with some other apps. There used to be a different drawing method called, well, didn't have a name, it was just a lot more minimalistic. And there has been discussions, there is a thread on how to, on basically how to turn that. There is even a PR to bring that as a preference. Although, I don't know if we need a preference for snapping icons. Like, it's like, you know, every time you add a preference, you're adding burden of maintenance in the future. Whenever there is a new snap mode, then developers will have to design a new icon for both, for the whatever this is and the minimalistic one. And we should just try to pick one and just learn what it means, right? Like, after you only learn it once, you only learn like, oh, that hourglass thingy is for edge, and this one is for perpendicular, this one is for corners. Anyway, next, text objects. This is a fix actually. You know how in when you're using regular mesh objects and you add a solidify modifier that allows you to choose an index of the material that is going to be used for the new faces created by that modifier? Well, for some reason, text objects, the index didn't start in 0, it started at 1. So it was inconsistent with the regular meshes where indices start at 0. So yeah, this has been fixed. Next, user interface. Here there's a whole bunch of add extension section. This is experimental. We shouldn't be talking about this yet. Doesn't even work yet. Add vertex crease operator to the vertex context menu. Actually, this was just to make it consistent with the edge context and having edge crease menu. By the way, there is a patch that it's still being reviewed for basically unifying the vertex, edge, and face menus into the mesh menu. It's like putting them all together, but still having them be smart. So in whatever mode you're in, you see the whatever menu, because this is not very smart way of handling multiple menus. Subdivide, it does the same in every menu. Why would we have it 3 times? So basically having one context menu that is for all modes, and it works depending on which mode you are in. Yeah, not the previous site, that thing. Let's see. Improve vertical spacing in node panels. Ah, yeah, this is a small change for adding panel. I already showed it. There was some lack of padding, and then now has more padding. It's very hard to see. This one is not hard to see. Have you ever noticed that when you open a blend file, Blender doesn't, well, a heavy blend file, Blender doesn't give you any feedback at all. There is a patch being worked on for improving this, to show maybe a message loading, show maybe a thumbnail of the file, show some kind of indicator that things are loading or things are happening. The big patch of adding a message, or it's still being worked on because it needs refining. If the file takes 1 second to load, you don't want to show something flash for 1 second, right? That makes too much noise. So that patch is still waiting, still being worked on. However, a small part of that patch was to change the cursor, at least change the cursor to a loading icon. So I don't know, in Windows, do they still use the, I know they use a circle thing. They don't use the hourglass anymore, I think. On a Mac, it's going to show the beach ball, and on Linux, whatever your Linux does. Custom tooltips, image field correction. Oh, no, this we are not even using it yet, but this will allow using images inside custom tooltips. Nice, but that is not even there yet. This is what I mentioned before. Shorten node socket labels when they start with the panel name. Oh, is it automatic? Oh, nice. So the socket name is still called emission color, but because the parent panel has the word emission in it, if it matches, it removes it. AI, ChatGPT for socket labels. Nice. Huh. That's cool. And future-proof too. Draw node panels in Material Properties Editor. Oh yeah, this is nice. Well, maybe you didn't even know. I don't know if you noticed or not, but the principal BSDF that I just show you that has these new panels, now the panels will become subpanels in here. So you can actually collapse this, and it's the same on each side. It would be nicer if it was darker though. I think it would feel more like a sub panel, and it would be matching here. But yeah, still pretty neat. Support drawing buttons inside node panels. Yeah, this is related to what I shown before. With a callback to panels, the one for nodes, using principal BSDF to place enums in the relevant panels. Ah, this is so we can add enums like this. So not only, wow, so much work. You would imagine this is, wow. Yeah, I didn't notice. Yeah, but the subsurface and all these settings were all the way to the top. Now they're actually in between the panels. Damn, people work so much. And the big change this week, this month, this century was that Blender has now a new font. I don't know if you noticed. The UI font has been replaced by Inter Regular. Inter is a pretty popular font. It's used by Mozilla, for example. It's used in their font. You can actually read about it. Sorry if I blind you. I blind myself as well here. But you can read the story. You can read the uses. Yeah. I don't want to blind you too much, but it's pretty nice because it is a variable font. So Blender now has support for, or will potentially have support for bold, for slanted, or slanted in the other way. Everything that this font supports. I think slanted in the other way does not supported by this, but you can have different weight, like thin, strong. For example, we could make it so users can choose if they want the panel titles to be bold and labels not bold, for example. So that would be pretty sweet once it's implemented. There is a patch for that. So far, what has been implemented is the font itself. That it looks pretty neat. Especially when today I was looking at the animation editor. The channels look so crisp and clean and just nice overall, and so cool. Also, this is not the font as it shows in the website. There's many variations of the font, and some tweaks have been done to, for example, the numbers. The numbers, they are different than the ones that come with the font. If you use it from Google Fonts, for example, like the 3, the 4, they have open ends and more sharp corners, so they are easier to spot at a distance, to read. I love this change in particular. Also, there is a new setting in the text rendering section where you can turn on or off sub-pixel anti-aliasing. This goes especially well when used in combination with any of the hinting modes. So choose whatever you see makes it look better in your screen, in your setup. If you have a retina display, if you have a symbol display, it would all look different in different versions. Also, another change that was done is that the I, for example, basically there's some letters that are tweaked in a way to make them look different, and you don't have the issue that, like, for example, the I, capital I, looks similar to the L, for example. Let's see if that was the case in Blender 3.6. If you have the user interface here, I have the capital I, it was just a line, and then the L also illegible. It's impossible to tell them apart. But now in Blender, you can do illegible, and they can be spot the difference. Nice. I mean, that I looks like a not maybe the prettiest, but you can read it. That's important. So it's not a change just to make it look cooler, which looked cooler to be honest, but I don't know, this is amazing. Congrats to Harley. He's been working on this for years, like pushing for this change, and it wasn't easy. It wasn't just the one change. It was like staring at this font for years and playing with the settings and rendering, and the moment this switch was done, he immediately went and tackled all whatever was coming up. Like if you were downloading Blender those days, you may have noticed the changes, but some of them you didn't notice because they were on the same day, multiple changes and improvements and spacing and hinting and rendering, and it's just so much work. Thank you, Harley, for pushing for this, and totally worth it. Totally worth it. I think everybody agrees. It looks so much nicer, and well, not only for this font, but all rendering, font rendering in Blender has been improved. Super nice. Some changes were done in the preferences, shuffling things around. Okay, this dude made some pictures. I hope. Yes, so the before and after is very small, actually. Some settings that were split into two lines, they are now combined. So playback frame rate and samples are combined into the one line. Very subtle change. This maybe is a bit more prominent. So duplicate data, this part of the settings where you can choose which data blocks are going to be copied, like duplicate when you shift D, for example. When you shift D an object, the material doesn't get duplicated, right? Doesn't make, well, in some cases maybe makes sense. That way it's a setting. So it looked like this, and now it looks like this. Now you can actually see the data block that they correspond to. Especially useful when the data block has the same name, because we're in transition mode. So now you can see, this is for hair curves. And also it's better for translations and overall. The setting called use custom colors now is called custom gradient, because it's a gradient and it's custom, and we don't use the word use before booleans. Just small things, you know. Harley spends years working on making the UI better, and I try my best into making the small details. Actually, the task continues, but you don't have to hear about all the little changes. The emulate 3-button mouse now is also in one line instead of two, so the UI is more compact. Same everything, just more compact. Next, let's see some real changes. Support additional console text operations. Adds the ability to set the text cursor position in the console editor by clicking with the mouse, and many other expected operations such as cut, select all, deselect on the text entry. Again by Harley. Neat. Nice. Remove dead space between three view items. This is a part of another pull request. There was some dead space, empty space between settings. The file browser no longer have a small size for the thumbnails anymore. Now it's just an integer, so you can set it to whatever you want. And related to this other task, allow menus to select thumbnail sizes in discrete steps. The No Catalog Node Assets menu has been renamed to Unassigned, although maybe you didn't even know, because I think in this is something that happened between the last 2 weeks. That's what happens when I don't do this live stream for 1 week. Sometimes things happen during the week, and then happen during the week. Nothing's changed, or things change only once, not multiple times. This is the features that were enabled that I mentioned before. The open digits disambiguation and tabular numbers. Also, that's another change. So this is how the numbers look. Also, at some point, the 0 had a line across, which it's okay, but yeah, turns out in some languages, we had some Danish friends saying, "Hey, that looks like a Danish letter." 0 with the thingy. YouTube glitch? Did he just glitch live? Did I glitch? Fabio, you just glitch. But what is glitch? In a good way? In a bad way? Here it says that dropped frames, 0 frames. And okay. YouTube looped me. Okay. Well, it made you repeat something. Matrix or a glitch. I can confirm that I have not glitched in real life. I sometimes my glitch in real life, not now. So let's continue with this. We're almost done. What is it? Okay. Use the Anas. Your frames weren't dropped. They were sent to another realm. Okay, let's move on. The unassigned icon for assets in modifiers has now been used in the menu. This is what I showed before in the during the node geometry nodes section and the tools section. This one is more important. Show recently selected items at the top of searches. This I love. Basically, whenever you search for something, like let's say you are a big fan of the mirror modifier, right? So you search for mirror and you type in mirror. Nice. And then you're a big fan of the UV warp, for example. Nice. And you're also a big fan of some physics like dynamic paint. Cool. Now, next time you search, if you start typing, the recently searched items are gonna show up first. So yeah, so that's it. That's the feature. It's awesome because it works on every add menu. So if you search for metaballs very often, next time you start searching, it will show the metaball first. And this is actually something that gets saved on your settings. So if I go to my config blender, is my blender folder 4.1, well, 02, there is recent searches.txt, and the text literally is whatever shows up here. Nice. Next. Move reset recent inside a menu. Ah, yeah, this is part of a task where it's a small thing, but it can save you some headaches because the clear recent items in the file browser, it was just an X, which is also confusing, in there in the sidebar, and you could easily click on it and your list will be reset. Now it's under a menu, so it takes 2 clicks to mess it up. Remove the redundant context menu in the menu titles. Very small change, but the context menus had the text context menu in them. So that was a bit redundant, and especially when you had these issues. Not anymore. Now basically, if it's an object context menu, it just says object. If it's a dope sheet context menu, it just say dope sheet, and so on and so forth. The splash screen also has some small tiny changes. The development fund text is now no longer called development fund, it's called donate, because donate is easier to understand. It is the same thing, and we hope that this will make more people feel like, oh, donate, this is what I want to do. And also in Spanish, donate, it's the same thing. Donate, donar, donare. It works more in more levels, I think, in more languages. And also release notes sound a bit too technical, so it was renamed to what's new, so you can see what's new. And also getting started used to link to the credits, which is great to give credits to developers, but it's not something you get started to. It's not the first thing that comes to mind when you open Blender for the first time. So now it's going to show you manual, tutorials, support, which the tutorial list is something we need to work on. But there is a place for tutorials in Blender. It's just empty at the moment. Plan to work on that. We need help from the community to make these tutorials. Support user communities and the Blender website. It's there. User communities, especially because user communities are what keep Blender afloat. The modes word in the animation edit. That is something I mentioned in the last live stream, that the word modes was a bit it didn't need to be there, so because it didn't add anything, and we don't use that in any other parts in Blender, so this has been removed. Nice. Thank you, Nate. The masking drop down. This is a change. It's actually a fix. the masking dropdown was twice, but was repeated basically in the tool settings. Not anymore. Oh, another change related to font and font sizes. Have you ever noticed how in Blender 3.6 and previous versions, the font size of the overlays, like the stats in the 3D view, it was hard-coded to 11 points everywhere. Like this text over here was hard-coded. Not anymore. Now, when you change the size of the font in theme, text style, widget, label, now you can actually scale this text. Yay, nice. Next. A small change. Bone wireframe opacity has been moved to general overlays. This was basically showing up every time you were in X-ray mode, and now this was it was a bit confusing because maybe you didn't have any armatures, but it will still show. So now that has been moved into the general overlay, which is a pity because it would only show, well, it only shows when it makes sense, which is what happened before, but it's a bit confusing because part of this change was motivated for whenever there is a new setting that appears or disappears in the overlay menus, it will be visible even if the overlay popover is closed. But anyway, the node editor node menu now matches the same as in the context menu. So basically the icons, the naming, and this amount of setting has been reduced because some of them have moved into sub menus. Same way basically as the context menu already had. Small tiny change. The asset shelf has been hidden by default. I already mentioned this, I think. Splash screen changes. The splash screen now shows, well, small changes. For example, when you start Blender, it says continue instead of, I think it would just say, had a different wording, but continue is more inviting. But the most importantly, something that every time there is a new version of Blender coming out, I read comments of people, I don't know if I'm gonna update because I don't want to lose my whatever settings, or I don't want to set up everything again. You don't have to set up everything again. There is a button that says load previous settings on every splash screen of every Blender release for the last decade or more. I think it was just very invisible apparently. That now has been moved all the way to the top with a big button that says import existing settings, that section, and then you can see what's new, what has changed, and also load the Blender settings, and it tells you the version of Blender that settings are coming from. So functionality wise, it hasn't changed. The feature is still there like it used to. Now it's more prominent. Hopefully we get less complaints from the users. But still, I still think this setting should be exposed somewhere, not just the very first time you run Blender. It should be somewhere in the preferences, like if it's possible to load previous settings, it should still be possible. Maybe we can add it to the preferences here, and it says like load whatever version Blender finds settings. It will be destructive, but why not? Next. This is a fix in the user interface when double clicking on a word, on a last word, is related to a bug that was reported. Apparently when you double click on a word to select it, the anchor, it was basically skipping one letter. I think that has been fixed. And a small clarification and renaming of operators and tooltips was done in the UV align. So UV align, you could align vertically or horizontally, and it used to be called align X and align Y, and sometimes align X would align it I mean, technically you could say it's correct, but it looked wrong. So now this has been renamed to align vertically and align horizontally, and also the tooltips are easier to understand. Let's switch for USD. Improve input output of emission color in previous surface. Don't export color if the strength is set to 0, and on import set the strength to 1 when there is a color. It's more important now that the default is color white and the strength is 0 in the principal BSDF. How long am I? All right, let's end here because I still have questions to do, and there's one big thing that I wanted to show that is in Blender 4.0. I'm gonna keep it for the next episode because I also need to learn how to use it before showing it. Let's see if there's 19 comments. Let's do 5 questions because otherwise this show is gonna be way too long. How long am I streaming for? 1 hour 20. Gee. Okay, let's go to the ones that are voted the most and then go to those without votes. All right, a short question to start. How's it going? Good. Okay, question number 1. Sansul says, I'm just curious, when will Blender get some substantial updates to the physics system? When there is a physics developer coming up. We unfortunately, the one developer that was working on that no longer works at Blender, so I guess physics are difficult. I love all aspects of Blender, affect the physics part because it doesn't compare to other DCCs. I think we all agree with that. The new simulation nodes are great, but I think just loops for now. I think everybody in this building and outside of anywhere agrees with you. Physics are a big lacking part of Blender, such as like other parts. And there will be a time, you know, the people used to say that about animation, and they still say that about animation, but it's getting there. People used to say that about the user interface before 2.8, and now people are happy with, or at least happier with the user interface. Let's hope that day comes one day for physics. Maybe now, because simulation nodes, we can't really complain about simulation nodes that much because they only been around for one version. Like, they're pretty young. So maybe now that we have the simulation zone, more actual simulation can be added as nodes, as solvers. It's a hard topic, physics. Especially when there's no developer around that wants to contribute in that area, or they do and they make a commercial add-on and then it never gets added. But yeah, will there be something similar to the fractal modifier but in geometry nodes in the future? I don't know, actually. I don't think it's planned, but if someone from the community comes and makes it, they would be, I'm sure it would be well received. Also, will there be another Blender is type of collaboration video after the 4.0 release? I don't think we're planning on making this, especially because Blender is, it wasn't just random. It was a way to connect users around the world in a very difficult time and strange time that was during COVID in 2020. So Blender was a way to, since we didn't have a Blender conference, it was a way to connect everyone. Hola Pablo, if you create a grid, select all faces and shrink the selection, it doesn't do anything. I should remove all the polys of the veg. If you create a grid, select all the faces and shrink the selection, it doesn't do anything. Bug or feature, I should remove all the polys on the edges. If you remove the polys, then there's no grid. I need a picture, sorry. Not a Fran. Hi Pablo, I hope you're doing well. Thank you, I am. I just came back from Valencia this weekend. I was in a festival called Weird Market Festival. The current primitives in the add menu are pretty well primitive. I wanted to know if there is a plan to replace the current primitives with geometry node primitives, such that we can edit the size of divisions dimension. That's something that what I similar to what I showed. I think node tools like where what I showed you before, like node group tools, are the first step into getting that. The next step would be an easy way to apply those modifiers. Like when you start editing, you can a quick way to freeze that geometry so you can start editing. So that's the missing part to have that. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Hi Pablo, I'm always watching the stream, but always forget to leave a comment. Well, thank you, and thank you for being a Blender Studio subscriber. I'm curious, is there any plans or work on enabling more stylistic rendering? Yes, you should just go into studio.blender.org, films, gold, and this is the next open movie project, which you may have heard about. Okay, maybe I can just log in so I can show you the things that people are putting up here. See all the production logs. Let's see some older content. Some older files. Oh, this is pretty nice. Geometry nose brush strokes with grease pencil. This is not even alpha. This is like insane. So basically, this is a mix of this is unreleased software, basically. Geometry nodes in grease pencil 3.0 used for making custom brushes that actually use their color and blend between the strokes. So long story short, yes, you can expect improvements in stylized stuff in Blender. And with this message, I should just like drop the bomb and just leave, but let's continue. In my current project, I have to render the same shots in both Eevee and cycles at the same time to get realistic lighting, but also cell shading. Yeah, the idea is to improve also compositing, so so you can use both and render layers and passes to be all part of one thing. Any chance we get face maps to return as an add-on? I know you said we should use attributes, but I don't know how to use attributes as selection storage for use in edit mode. No. Face maps to return as an add-on, it's too much of a core feature to be made into an add-on. But maybe there could be an add-on that makes those attributes more easily accessible. But what were you using from face maps that you cannot do with geometry nodes and attributes? I'm curious, because face maps were partially removed because no one seemed to be doing anything. Like no bug reports, no things that you see on Twitter or on social media using the feature. So yeah, I think whatever you were doing back then, most of it you can do now in geometry nodes, or if not, it would be possible soon. All right, that was 5 questions for this already extremely long episode. I think I should just try to do this again next week, just so it's a bit shorter. And although, yeah, no, because if I skip the next one, then I was 16, and then no, I will do the next one and the next one, because at some point I will probably have to skip one because of the Blender conference. And I don't know what. I really can't believe that 1 month from now Blender conference will be over and we will be 5 days away from Blender 4.0 to be out, like for everybody to use it. Please, I know 4.1 is exciting, but download the beta of Blender 4.0, open your blend files, make sure that they work. If they don't, go to the wiki to see if it expected that some things don't work. If not, please report them, because that's how we get a stable software, and it's for everyone. But yeah, let's try to keep it chill. It's crazy times coming. You know what else is crazy? That in a week from now, we're gonna see each other again here. Maybe for a shorter episode. I don't think we will see many new features added, because as I mentioned, developers are working mainly on whatever is that needs to be fixed for 4.0. So hopefully we are not going to see many new features and we can just chat for an hour. Why not? Or maybe I can get Dalai maybe to come and give a proper demo of this huge new feature that is node groups tools, because I didn't do justice today. I didn't use any of the specific nodes like selection and 3D cursor and so on and so forth. So I maybe I can do that next week. If we don't have that many new features, I can ask Dalai to come in and give a demo, like firsthand, from one of the developers that is actually in the team every day. So I'm not gonna warn you about your ear holes, because it probably is not gonna be loud enough for you to tell you that. And I say that while I'm looking for the button to press. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. See you next week for another episode of Blender Today Live. Was that loud enough? Users in the chat, they say, oh, it wasn't loud enough. Thanks everyone. Have a fantastic week. I will see you next week, same place, same time, for another episode of Blender Today Live. Bye.